this session is what kind of program for your party? And we have 5 speakers, so we need to be accurate with time. Vincent Davey, if I'm spelling correctly, the Spartacist League. Richard Brenner, Marxist Strategy. Ted Reese, Democratic Socialists. Mike Macnair, CPGB. And HaPe from International Bolshevik Tendency.
They're not, they're national now.
Okay, Bolshevik Tendency.
I stand corrected.
Okay, and we're going to start with Vincent. You go.
Oh, I start.
Yeah.
Yay!
Right. Hello, everyone. I decided I'm not going to develop a full program for your party. I want to talk about what took place today at conference, what happened, what to do, and where do revolutionary socialists go from there. There'll be some program, don't worry. So what happened today, I think the leadership of your party really threw the gauntlet. They really went on the offensive against the left. We've seen the purge of the SUP. We've seen, multiple briefing against Zara Sultana that was ongoing, obviously, and we really see them draw the line against any socialist, communist, Marxist element inside your party. And really, okay, the conference itself, I was a delegate there. It was really a stitch up, really all organized by the bureaucracy, tightly controlling the debate, the question we could talk about. That wasn't so much a surprise, to be honest, and I'm sure maybe for many of you, you're not surprised. Well, what was a bit of a surprise, I should say, was not only that the right was in control of the conference, but they had a certain base of support in the conference itself, actually. That was for me a sort of element that I wasn't expecting so much. There is some support for the expulsion of the LGBT. There is some support for Corbyn and for sort of the program he's pushing, essentially. What does that mean? Where do we go from there? Well, we have to analyze a bit what is the political conflict taking place on the conference floor. You have really sort of 2 wings, which a right wing, which really wants to have a moderate, liberal, wishy-washy party, acceptable purge of communists and socialists. That's why it's important to oppose the purge against the SWP. And then on the other wing, you have revolutionary socialists who, well, you have people who want to fight for a working class socialist options, and they're sort of clashing against the other. These are sort of the 2 wings. It's really a debate over what your party will be, what will be the type of party that comes out of this conference. Now, in the face of this, what to do, essentially? I think it might have been quite demoralizing or difficult for the most left-wing element today, being sort of swamped particularly the debate on the dual membership. You had, although we were pushing back, the right wing they finished really the debate extremely strong. The debate on the political statement, you literally have people getting up against socialism and against the working class. So I guess I want to discuss, we can't discuss program abstractly. I think we have to discuss program in a specific context. And this is the context we're facing today. So I think the first point to do is obviously the point of the united front. The left must come together to push back against the witch hunt, to push back against this bureaucracy, which is really tightly controlling your party and is really dead set at making it a really wishy-washy liberal party, as I said. However, and we in the Spartacist League have sort of banged on this a lot in the last few weeks. Only opposing the witch hunt isn't enough. Only opposing the bureaucracy on the standpoint of democracy isn't enough. Because you oppose the witch hunt for what? Well, you oppose the witch hunt if you are convinced that socialists have a positive role to play in this party, to shape it, essentially. If you just oppose the witch hunt, that's not enough. And same thing with democracy. Same thing with democracy. If I think what the conference has revealed today is that there is, as I said, a important support for the right. I don't know if it's dominant or majoritarian, but there are many people who support Corbyn, who support this sort of liberal pacifist program he's pushing forward, and who support the witch hunt, but only democracy in itself cannot be a solution. And so I think the argument I want to make today is that the revolutionary socialist wing in this party right now, its main problem is a lack of political coherence. And that's my point about not enough the witch hunt, not enough fighting the democracy. What do we fight for? And I think what's key, and what we've been fighting for, is for the revolutionary elements in this party to come together on the basis of a political platform. We might have disagreements on this or that question, but we must come together and, on a number of key political questions. And the way we need to fight is by demonstrating to the base of your party why revolutionary socialism isn't just an abstract thing for the future. It's really key to solve the problem that the left is facing. It's key to make your party a successful party. I believe, as well as probably many others here, your party, if it will succeed, must be a radical working class socialist party that has to be demonstrated to the various questions and problems the left is facing today. And I believe we need it's this lack of political coherence, I think, which is at the source of why the left is so much on the back foot. Just a quick point, we have supported critically Zara Sultana so far, because she has drawn a certain number of lines against NATO, against Zionism, for socialism, for trans liberation, for working class power. All these are good. But again, Zara Sultana has arrived at these positions sort of by successive approximation, by being put in this place, and not by political insight about what the epoch demands. I think that political coherence for us in the Spartacist League can be found in the struggle against liberalism. Because if you think about it, the biggest problem that the socialist movement is facing in Britain, but really in the entire Western world, is that it is completely divorced from the working class. Few people talk about this. Everybody at the conference, working class. A lot of the working class looks to Farage and Tom Robinson today. And there are very few workers in your party and in the socialist left. They are. But think about industrial workers in the milieu you are. There aren't many. Throughout the last years and decades, the working class, a lot of the working class has turned its back on the left. And the analysis we've developed is the reason for that is because the left has pursued alliances with liberal politicians and has embraced liberal politics, essentially, at a time when these politics were the dominant one in the Western world by the liberal wing of the ruling class. That is the thing. And so for us, as Spartacist League, we tried to develop a program. We have a draft platform, by the way, on our table to at least have a debate on the left on what should be a program. And for us, it has to be, when we talk about a program, yes, we have to attack the right. Yes, we have to attack Farage. Yes, even we have to attack Starmer. But we must also equally draw the sharpest line against liberal politics, which is really what is plaguing the left and is preventing it from reaching the working class and is actually pushing workers into the arms of the right. I'll try to make that concrete with a few points and not go into a full program. The easy one, maybe the most simple to the most controversial. The easy one, expropriation of the City of London and a plan to reindustrialize the country. I think probably most people would agree. Liberals, a defining feature of them is they want to tinker with the system. They don't want to abolish capitalism. So that's sort of simple. The second point is opposition to the American empire. So what do I mean by that? I mean, the United States is the world's prominent imperialist power. We have to oppose it. We have to oppose its British imperialism and dominion, and we have to oppose its institution. NATO, the European Union, also Zionism in the Zionist project, Israel. So that is because the liberals, they always support the American empire. Just like Zach Polanski, they can make criticism of it, but it's always to make it better. The third point, I think, is to oppose the Green Party. Draw a sharp line against the Greens. The Greens are a liberal, middle-class party, and viewed by many workers as such. So your party must sharply distinguish itself from those politics. They seek to make solve this climate crisis by making the working class pay. And fourth, for us, is for a working class position on immigration. That will be a little more controversial, maybe. Yes, we must oppose Farage, Tommy Robinson, the right wing, the racist scapegoating of immigrants. yes, we must defend immigrants, including physically, when they face riots and racist thugs. However, the position of a lot of the far left have often been in a continuum with the liberal wing of the ruling class. There is also a wing of the ruling class which has seeked to brought a lot of immigration in this country for their own profit, to drive down wages. And the standard definition of the left and the far left often on this question has been to basically support explicitly or not, this position, and that has to be broken from. Like the Slovene refugees are welcome here is increasingly seen by a large number of the working class as a Slovene directed against them, not against the ruling class. This isn't a concession against to the right. This is actually trying to develop a working class position on immigration. As socialists, we're against closing the borders, we're against quotas on immigration, we're against deportation. But we're also not for a particular policy of the ruling class regarding the question of immigration. And lastly, on the trans question, it's key to fight for trans liberation. No concession to the right wing on this question, but there's a liberal way, I believe, to fight for trans liberation, and there's a working class socialist way to fight for trans liberation. The liberal way focuses on ideas, progressive ideas, draws a hard line on this question, but the working class socialist way, I think, seeks to put forward a class interest that we do not agree with everything that is in our head, but there is a class interest of the working class to defend trans people, and we need to agree basically to have each other's back against attack and defend the right of trans people to live their life the way they want. So I selected these 5 points just to highlight that for us as Spartacist, it's really in the fight against liberalism, against the right wing, but against liberalism, that the revolutionary socialism can find really a coherence to fight for your party to work, to fight the witch hunt as well, and to show that you need this program. Thank you.
Okay, what I'm going to say, I think quite a lot of what Comrade Vincent said is stuff I agree with. But I am going to say stuff which I think he will think of as abstract. The reason why I'm going to say stuff which I think he'll think of as abstract is we start with the situation. He says, and I think rightly, there is substantial broad support within HaPe on the conference floor for Corbyn's policy. What is that policy? Actually, perfectly straightforward and familiar. It's the British road to socialism. It's the idea that the first step is to get a Labour government, and then you're going to get a Labour government further to the left. And having been thrown out of the Labour Party, what Corbyn's project is to create a Labour Party Mark II, which, just like the Labour Party, is within the framework of British parliamentary the dominance of the parliamentary party, just like the Labour Party is within the framework of the domination of the party apparatus, of commitment to parliamentary politics, and correctly, yes, liberalism in terms of general politics. Okay, so we have had this idea that the left was dominated by Stalinism, official communism, old-fashioned official. In reality, the left is still dominated by the ideas of official communism. The Morning Star remains the dominant political ideology in the left wing of the trade union movement, in the left wing of the Labour Party. Then, secondly, it's not the case. The Labour Party is the Labour Party. It's the Labour Party which, it remains the case of the Labour Party which voted for World War I, and the Labour Party which, from its inception, was a party which followed British foreign policy and voted with the liberal imperialist wing of the Parliamentary Liberal Party from 1900. It's the Labour Party of Snowden's Bank of England budget and of Jimmy Thomas ordering poison gas bombing of Iraqi villages in the first Labour government in 1923. So then the flip side of that is it's not the case that the Labour Party has ceased to be the Labour Party and that there is therefore political space for a new Labour Party. Then the question we have to think about then is what's not what immediate alternative. As I said, on immediate alternative, I agree with quite a lot of what Comrade Vincent said. Yeah? But what strategic alternative? What strategic alternative to British road to socialism and politics? And in that context, I said in the last session, the left keeps reinventing the square wheel. One of the ways in which the left keeps reinventing the square wheel is that the far left in particular, on the one hand, the left keeps reinventing the square wheel in the form of reformism of the Popular Front type, which is what BRS is, but also the far left keeps reinventing the square wheel in the form of Bakunin's general strike policy. Yeah. And the versions of Bakunin's general strike policy. We have a falsification of what happened in the Russian Revolution to make it into the image of Rosa Luxemburg's the mass strike, which is radical misdescription of what happened. We need, therefore, to think through what sort of alternative policy. First off, it has to be communist. It's a communist policy. That means it's not a Labourite policy. It's not a British nationalist policy, which Labourite policy is. It's not a parliamentary sovereignty policy, which British Labourite policy is. It's not a pro-imperialist policy, or indeed a soft pro-imperialist policy, which is British. When people talk about Britain playing a positive role, Britain developing a liberal or pacifistic foreign policy, Britain to play a positive role in the world, that's leaving out the reality, just as it's leaving out the real role of the British state in, for example, supplying the supply of weapons to Israel through RAF Akrotiri.
Supply of weapons to RAF.
You need to have it more distant.
More distant.
More distant. Okay. Very sensitive. Yeah, the supply of weapons to Israel through RAF Akrotiri, flying reconnaissance for the IDF over Gaza and so on and so forth. So it needs to be unambiguously anti-imperialist. And that choice, and unambiguously defeatist, but just as much defeatist in relation to Britain's and the United States' proxy war in Ukraine as in relation to the genocide in Gaza. Second, and this is the point which becomes controversial, it needs to be a maximum minimum program. We need the maximum program, that is to say, we need the idea of getting wholly beyond capitalism. It's not good enough to just say, we have this answer, that answer in relation to this particular struggle which is going on right now. We need to have the thought of, and to be propagandizing the idea of a society completely beyond class society, beyond the state classes, economic dependence on the family, a society, a communist society as a whole. We need that image. We need that idea. We need that idea because without that idea, we are driven into either tailing the liberals or tailing the conservatives. In our present, in the trans-liberation debate, it really is the case that the line of some groups has been just to tail the liberals. Comrades are correct. At the same time, other people, particularly the Morning Star, are essentially tailing the conservatives. And that's been much more general. The Morning Star's tailed the conservatives on the Brexit question. So we need a maximum program, but we also need a minimum program. And the minimum program is not an action program for what the working class should do in the next strike struggle, in the next demonstration, etc. It's a program for what a party would do if it was able to form a government. Now, that would involve mass mobilisations. It's not that's counterposed to mass mobilisations. It's a program for what immediate changes could be made by a workers' government or a government of workers' parties, which would break the political power of the capitalist class and create the conditions for a process of transition. And in that context, I give an example. Expropriation of the City of London comes right as an immediate thing. A programme for reindustrialising Britain on its own is a delusion, because the reality is Britain has deindustrialised because it was the world hyper-imperialist power before the United States was the world hyper-imperialist. We need, therefore, a minimum programme which is a programme for taking political power, which poses questions in relation to substantive political issues, not just, but it's also, at its core, a programme for political democracy. And this is where comrades are wrong about saying we need to deprioritise the question of democracy, because the reality of the matter is, first, that the experience of the Soviet Union and Eastern Europe led everybody to think we can't have socialism and it's inherently undemocratic. We have to have answers to that. Second, the capitalist class rules through the support of the labour bureaucracy. The labour bureaucracy functions as outworks. Before you can get to the walls of the capitalist fortification, you have to take down the labour bureaucracy, just as the capitalists had to take down the merchant princes before they could overthrow communism. And that, in turn, requires political democracy in the workers' movement. And the two things are intimately connected. You can't fight for political democracy in the workers' movement and not fight for unequivocal political democracy within the state regime. So political democracy is at its centre, and that's political democracy in the workers' movement, not just in the centre. That's, I'm saying simply, the shape of politics, so that the shape of a programme, not much more.
So HaPe is from Bulletin. Go ahead.
Sure. Your party can and should establish itself as a mass fighting force for socialism, and I think
Just hold the mic just a little bit away.
Okay. First, this requires inter-party democracy, where every member can be heard and different positions can be discussed, and this is particularly important in the forthcoming struggles. So today is a blow to that. The party structure should reflect the setup with democratically elected delegates via a one-member, one-vote system at all levels, within even including leadership, with immediate recallability where required. At the first meeting of the Lewisham proto-branch, where I'm based, several attendees vocally rejected the idea of building a Labour Party Mark II. I think we all agree on that as well, at least on some level. In order to avoid that trap, we need to understand the power structures and dynamics within capitalism, which force all business owners to continuously squeeze their workforce or face bankruptcy in a never-ending struggle for increased productivity and profits. The outcome for the mass of the population are longer and more intense working hours for those who still have a job, whilst more and more to have to survive without one with ever-increasing levels of poverty. That's the situation we're in right now. The capitalist state is dependent on tax income and, in the short term, on loans provided by the private financial institutions, which can dictate economic outcomes over the subjective will of any government. And that's important. Should a government try to implement leftist reforms, the banks might cut off funding, and then those reforms cannot be financed and cuts will ensue, and that's the trap that Syriza and Reese in 2015 fell into. The capitalist ruling class possesses powerful financial levers to undermine the measures introduced by left radical reformers aimed at reversing cuts, privatization, and other attacks. Sometimes the capitalist state's repressive apparatus resorts to violence when it feels that its interests are under the threat and uses a military coup. The Allende government, Popular Front government in Chile in 1973 is an interesting case, but it's closer to home as well. The threats made in September 2015 by an unnamed general to carry out a coup should Jeremy Corbyn come to power in a future general election shows that the working class needs to be prepared for this scenario. That is why a socialist government will need to replace the capitalist state repressive apparatus, including the police, prison officers, and border guards, with new institutions composed of personnel loyal to the workers' movement. There should be no room in either our party or the trade unions for these current defenders of capitalist rule. In order to prevent economic sabotage, the working class will need to nationalize large corporations, banks, and the transport system without compensation and place them under democratic workers' control. Only by breaking the might of the ruling class and bringing the essential core of the economy under our control will we gain access to all the resources required to build the economy in line with a plan that meets the needs of both the mass of the population and the environment. This precludes any electoral alliances with outright capitalist parties such as the Greens, who have no meaningful relationship with the trade unions but are fundamentally dependent on the capitalist class. Despite their left-sounding rhetoric, they have called on the population of Breitmann, for example, to scab during a refuse worker strike in 2021 and implemented cuts in local councils under their control. And when recently prompted, Zach Polanski confirmed that they will continue doing so. Your party must lead the fight against further attacks on working class living standards and whenever possible go on the offensive in order to bring about material gains, but link the struggle with the socialist end goal. If we limit ourselves to just patching up the current economic order, we will end up in a never-ending struggle for a few more crumbs here and there, and that's how we got here to this particular historical juncture in the first place. Your party needs to use the parliament as a stage for its ideas and where possible for implementing a few positive social reforms, but more importantly, your party should be focusing on building working class power through unionization and working class activities such as strikes. The strike wave of 2022 showed that there is tremendous potential which is currently restricted by anti-trade union legislation. So your party should be campaigning for defying the anti-trade union laws and for their abolition while wholeheartedly supporting every strike. It should fight for decent, affordable housing and education for all, and the complete renationalization of the NHS, water and railways with adequate funding, and in the ultimate aim of bringing the entire economy under its planned and democratic control. But our struggle mustn't be restricted to the economic arena either. We need to defend all oppressed groups and minorities, whilst understanding that such oppression is intrinsically bound up with the class oppression of capitalism and preceding class societies. We need to fight for full citizenship rights for all immigrants and equal pay for equal work and much more. Your party should organize to defeat fascist attacks by working together with the largest possible coalition without compromising on the understanding that successful self-defense can only be organized by ourselves rather than relying on the police. We should stress that anti-Zionism is not anti-Semitism and fight for ending the witch hunts and prosecutions against all opponents of Israel's genocide. Your party should stand against the undemocratic anti-terror and anti-protest laws. These laws are just a domestic extension of British imperialism's foreign policy in support of an engagement in imperialist and genocidal wars. Where it is not cynically exploited for imperialist ends, your party must stand for the right to national self-determination and the secession of oppressed nations if the majority of their population desires it, and most importantly here at home. Your party should be carrying out to leave NATO whilst ending Britain's support for proxy wars in West Asia and Ukraine. We shouldn't give one person or one penny for the military whilst demanding the closure of all military bases in Ireland and elsewhere. And we should recognize the right of exploited neo-colonial countries to defend themselves against imperialist attack. We believe that the Italian workers are currently, and have in the past, shown the way that your party could best support such countries through preventing the onward transfer of military hardware to the Israeli regime by strike action. Such action not only signals support to oppressed populations, but it also helps building working class self-confidence and power, and this is what should be at the center of what your party does.
Richard Brenner.
Thanks very much, everybody. Can you hear me okay? So I want to try to answer the question, what programme does your party need? And my starting point, therefore, is it needs a programme that addresses the needs of the working class in Britain and internationally. And that means we need a programme of action. I don't think there's any point in having a programme which includes the goal of socialism and a set of proposals for what we're going to carry out in government, if we don't also have a series of proposals about how we mobilise around those demands now, because that is how we connect the immediate to the goal. That's how we will mobilise large numbers of people. That's how we will get the working class fighting around a whole raft of immediate questions, and it's how we will connect those immediate demands to the fight for socialism and the fight for the rule of the working class. So any programme that doesn't do that doesn't actually meet the needs of the moment, and certainly doesn't meet our needs. So what do we need? We need a programme of action. And we need a programme of action that begins now, and that actually involves, in every city, in every town and region where we have sizable branches, and we do have branches, and without a great deal of help from above, we're building them. And what should they be doing now? Not just waiting for May, not just waiting for council elections, let alone just waiting for a general election, but we should be propelling every branch into struggle straight after this conference around the immediate needs of working people, around the cost of living crisis now. And that's what we hear when we go out, when we do speak outs in the street in Southwark. I'm from Peckham, I'm the chair of your party Southwark branch. We're going out on the streets, and what we're hearing is that people are afraid. People are afraid that they haven't got enough money to get to the end of the month, so let's start a campaign against price rises, for a price freeze, and let's take direct action against the organisations, the food companies, the supermarkets, the investors in those. Let's occupy offices, let's encircle their offices, let's connect with the trade unions, and let's fight for a freeze on prices. We've got a campaign in our area around buses, where we want actually to have free transport. Whatever we think of Mamdani, one question that we know got a lot of support from the working class in New York was the idea of free public transport. Well, in London, we definitely need that because of the incredible cost that it actually involves for low-paid workers who can barely afford to live in London anyway, and because the network has been run down in many, many areas. But how do you campaign for that? You campaign for that, obviously, by organising. You campaign for that in elections, but also we need to be getting people jumping on buses in large crowds and surrounding the mayor's office and surrounding Transport for London's offices in London. Right, and taking direct action to say, this is what we want. This is what working class people want. And let's connect that action to a fight for the transport companies to be nationalised, for the food companies to be nationalised, for wages to be pegged against inflation, right, for everybody to get a pay rise. Let's organise our members in every trade union to fight to integrate the pay claims in the coming year, so that we have mass strike action which is coordinated around a pay rise, and let's actually show in real direct way how we can take forward the fight to improve the living standards of the working class. Because if this party doesn't do that, then it is not anything other than an electoral vehicle. And it's no good saying we don't like reformism, and then you leave it in the abstract and do not actually take a campaign of action to the working class. And when we do that, we will become the flesh and blood of people in our communities who are suffering because of the cost of living crisis, and our election campaigns will no longer be the boring forms of Labour Party type electioneering, but we will be connected intimately to direct action in every area where we are standing. Now, what about the far right? What about the attacks on the hostels, on the migrant hostels? We can talk about the need for working class defence, and I agree with it. But right now, fascist gangs are attempting to attack vulnerable migrants, including families, not all men, by the way, and they're attacking those hostels, and we need to organise their defence. Now, how do we do that? Obviously, we need a mass campaign. Obviously, we need a truth kit that answers all the lies, so that we're all working from that central hub of information which answers every one of the racist lies. Obviously, we also need a proper digital team, right, that instead of rigging a conference, devote their digital skills instead to actually trying to fight back against the bots and the trolls and the troll farms of the far right that are populating every regional and local news group with their fascist and racist filth, and actually try to combat them, clean them up, and protect our own social media and communications accounts. And obviously we need physical self-defence as well. Physical self-defence. And we must assert our legal right to do that. The Jewish community has the Community Security Trust. Nobody calls that terrorism. Nobody calls that, illegal under the Livery Act. Nobody says that that's in some way a move towards civil war. Let's assert our legal right to organise our own self-defence, and let's do it openly. Legal defence, digital defence, physical defence, and let's have a defence association of the working class movement. Let's fight for a rent freeze. Let's occupy the big landlords. Let's take over empty properties. Let's prevent evictions, just as we, at the same time, work to prevent snatch squads removing migrants as the Home Office try to move as close as possible to reform and to Tommy Robinson as they can. We have to recognise if, as Zara Sultana says, we are in a class war, then we're not waiting to form some sort of government. I don't know how Mike thinks we're going to get that government, by the way. I'd be interested to hear how he thinks the working class will come to power, because I think what we need to be doing, right, is organising the sort of movement that can take the power when we have to. Because the reality is that the class struggle is a contest between the working class and the ruling class every day, every hour, and in every single place in this country and around the world. We have to resist the owner's dictatorship in the workplace and resist the right of managers to manage. And every time a business lays off workers or cuts pay, we should be advocating that it is occupied, and our members in the union should be arguing for strike action and solidarity action and defying the anti-trade union laws and coming together in a mass movement that actually tries to take control of the technology and the work process, so that instead of the bosses cutting the jobs, the workers can cut the hours with no loss of pay. And that obviously means moving towards a number of points that are shared here about nationalisation and expropriation of the banks, of the financial institutions, of the top corporations and the investment funds, centralising their data and their systems into a new working class planning ministry, confiscating the wealth of the top families and sharing the work amongst all adults who can work. Now, there's a number of things that I'm not going to be able to cover in the available time. Climate change, a number of other really, really critical questions. Education, the health service, women's liberation. But I do, I've actually tried to draft a programme for your party, and I put it on a new blog called MarxistStrategy.info. But I wrote it when I thought we were going to have 800,000 members. So I then rewrote it when we got 50,000 members, and I think after this weekend I'll probably go home and rewrite it again. But the point here, is that, and I've got 2 minutes, and thank you very much for that, that yes, we need to take up all the democratic demands that Mike mentioned. Yes, we need MPs that will only take the average pay of a worker. Yes, we need to mobilise against the monarchy and the House of Lords. Yes, we need to oppose the ban on Palestine action. Yes, we need to oppose all of the repressive legislation, including the anti-union laws. But we also have to recognise that our MPs, who must only take the average pay of a worker, whatever the conference allows us or doesn't allow us to say, should not be respecting parliamentary procedure. But if we've got a group of MPs and they're about to pass a disgusting law that involves removing, for example, indefinite leave to remain, and is going to lead to hundreds of thousands of people being thrown out of the country, then our MPs should disrupt Parliament for as long as it takes to stop them actually getting that through. But the other thing we have to say, my last point, is that the British ruling class, and Mike has given many examples of how they behave, is the oldest, craftiest, most cynical, blood-stained capitalist class in the world, and have been since the dawn of capitalism, and in their brutal colonial land grabs and wars from Africa and India to Palestine and Ireland, the British establishment is soaked in blood from head to toe, and therefore the idea that if we won an election and got 600 Jeremy Corbyns and Zara Sultanas into Parliament, I know, I'll say even more, 600 Mike Macnairs into Parliament, right? 600 Vincent Davids into Parliament, yeah? Then the chance of the British billionaires, finance capitalists, landed aristocrats, admirals, generals, police and spy chiefs saying, oh, okay then, we give in, the chance of that is nil. It is nil. And therefore, a workers' government will come to power in Britain in one way only. In one way only, whether we've won an election or not, right? Whether there's a mass strike going on or not. And that is by delegate-based councils of workers all across the country with their own defence association directly confronting and breaking up the repressive power of the capitalist state. Breaking it up. It's no good saying we're going to win an election, we're going to abolish the army, we're going to bring in a different sort of force. The force that abolishes the army will be the armed force under the rule of the working class. And that is the revolutionary road to socialism, not the British road to socialism. And that is the method that applies not to a period in which the minimum ideas of immediate struggle and the maximum goal of socialism exist in different zones, but in the world that we live in today, where every struggle poses the question of power, where we have to fight for power every minute of every day.
Well done.
I think you should have put him last.
I'm going through that. It's too difficult. Ted Reese.
Sorry, I'm Ted Reese. I'm part of the DSYP, the Democratic Socialists of your party. So I've just lost my page. Basically, we've been fighting for a minimal programme for maximum democracy in your party, trying to get your party to adopt our programme, which we consider to be much more radical than the one presently proposed. We've written our own alternative founding documents, and at the moment we don't know if your party is going to be an explicitly socialist party, obviously, because that was voted on today. But we want to turn your party into one that is explicitly socialist, and not on the terms that Jeremy Corbyn would probably define socialism, which would be, you know, renationalising public services and a few core industries, which would basically amount to a mixed economy. Our understanding is that capitalism per se, not any kind of type of capitalism that you might want to name, is increasingly incapable of meeting the needs of the working class. So, you know, as the system advances and evolves, it needs to exploit us more and more. You know, more and more of the working day needs to be turned into profits. It needs us to work harder. It needs higher unemployment. All of these types of things. It needs to commodify nature at an accelerating rate, destroy the environment, which undermines the basis for capitalism itself eventually. And, you know, so there's not, in the long run, there's not going to be the potential for a mixed economy. That's not to say that we shouldn't fight for any reforms, and we should only fight for, we should only try and mobilise the working class in the event that we could make a revolution out of it. Pretty much agree with everything Richard said. We need a programme of action. The DSYP is clear that we need to organise not just for elections, but on the streets, in our communities, in our workplaces, in all of these different ways to start uniting the working class as broadly as possible, and not just nationally but internationally, starting with our European colleagues. And we've got a programme, we've got a Points of Unity programme, and we've got a set of demands, which, as I say, we're fighting for maximum democracy in the party. We want a member-led democracy, branch-led democracy. We want recognition of the proto-branches, and we want the leadership, because we do accept that there needs to be a degree of centralisation, but we need the leadership to be accountable and answerable to the membership and to the branches at the local level. And the regional branches should also be answerable to the local branches. That's where the real power resides, because that's where most of the membership will be. We want 50% of funds raised to go to the branches, so that the branches, are empowered to have the resources they need to organise and to be able to go out and build working class solidarity. So it's things like this that we are demanding and that we want the party to adopt. And I do think we have had a sizable influence on the membership, despite being a very new organisation and being under-resourced and having to do this in a very limited amount of time. So I urge everyone here to check out the DSYP website, check out our Points of Unity, check out our alternative programme. We've got an abridged version on the website. If that would be a good introduction, leading on to checking out the fuller programme. And like I say, I agree with Richard. We need a programme of action. You can't just elect 600 social democratic or even 600 socialist or communist MPs into Parliament and expect the powers that be to step aside and obey. They've never done that. They never will do it. But we also do need to emphasise along the way, as we try to communicate socialist ideas, that capitalism is not sustainable. It's not sustainable socially, economically, environmentally. All of those things are tied up intimately. They all overlap. The more automated the system gets, the more difficult it is for capital to generate sustainable profitability, which therefore deters investment, because if the profits aren't coming in, the investment falls away. And that's why, I know Jeremy Corbyn likes to say austerity is a political choice, but from the point of view of capital and its sustainability, it's a question of survival for capital. So if you're in the capitalist class, you've survived the last decade and a half because of the cuts to public services and to social services and to working class living standards. So unfortunately, it would be nice to be able to sit here and say, we just need to reverse austerity, we just need higher wages. And as I say, I'm all for fighting for reforms such as pegging wages to inflation and that sort of thing, as they've done in Venezuela for quite a long time now. But we have to go further in the end, and it is going to happen this century, and maybe sooner. The next crash is going to be horrific. It's going to be worse than 2008. So it's worth preparing ourselves mentally. It's worth speaking to everyone we know, about the state of the economy, and trying to, we have to just convert people, if someone is, liberal left, you've got to start converting them a little bit further to the left, and so on and so forth, you know what I mean? You've got to the radical social democrats have got to be converted all the way to socialism, and so on and so forth. So because we're not going to be able to do it in one fell swoop. This is why we say reformism is part of the struggle for revolution, but we can't stop at reformism. So one of the demands that we've placed that we want the party to adopt is that we will not take power until we are able to overturn the constitutional status quo and replace the capitalist state with a socialist state, because we're not going to accept being put in a position where we're just managing the decline of capitalism and working class living standards. We're not going to do what happened in Greece and take power, say we're going to raise living standards, and then go, oh, actually we can't do that. We're going to fight for socialism all the way.
Can I just mention that we only have 35 minutes for this session, so can I ask you to be very brief? I'm sure the speakers will reply themselves, but I don't think anyone here suggested 600 socialist MPs or communist MPs.
I'm sure I'm in favour of 600.
Yes, but not as the only solution to the revolution. Okay. Yeah. Can I see raised hands? Can you be brief and say what you want concisely? Thank you.
I think that the key to building a program and to building an actually revolutionary socialist state here in Britain is through transitional demands. And one of the things I was talking to about people here at the conference was one of the few actual policies is the nationalizations of the very vaguely key sectors and services in the economy. And so I was asking people, what are those key sectors and services for you? And the number one reply from people was, well, actually, everything. Everything that we need to live. And I think that needs to be the basis of a program, and that we need nationalization of, not just the utilities and the rail, but we need to nationalize the supermarkets. We need to nationalize, Jeremy talked this morning about building a mass construction of council houses. But the reason that's not happening is because it's not profitable for those construction companies. We need to be nationalizing those construction companies. We need to be nationalizing the banks to fund all of this program. And to actually get that done, we need to say, okay, we can't just nationalize things from the top. This is actually going to take workers' control, right? So even before the election happens, we need to be working in these industries, building up a base in these industries to actually have the infrastructure to run these industries democratically through a democratic plan of production. And regardless of whether we're winning the election or not, we can be making that happen through our own work. We can be building those things, and when we have that sort of infrastructure, I disagree on the point that we shouldn't be taking power before we have the capacity to build that sort of nationalization, or we have that infrastructure. Like if you look at Venezuela, Hugo Chavez took power and started the waves of nationalization much earlier. And so we can use power, we can use the platform of being PM to advocate even further and wider for those kind of nationalizations.
Sorry, the gentleman with you are, yeah. He's got his right hand up.
Hi, I just want to say I really do, sorry, I didn't quite catch your name. The person second from the right. Richard, yes. I really agreed with what you were saying about specifically this being a part of the struggle, right? We cannot trust in the bourgeois election system to deliver us a socialist party which wins. We have to start taking power now. We have to, like, a large reason I find when I talk with people about why the party isn't inspiring to them, or why the party is inspiring to them, is that there's a lack of confidence that the workers have in themselves. There is this desire to be told what to do, told what to think, told how to organise, and I think we need to build that confidence of the working class in themselves, and that comes through showing them that they can succeeding in tangible campaigns which have real impacts. If your party loses the electoral campaign, we should have built up a strong enough fighting working class force to oppose them. Right? If Farage wins, we shouldn't be passively standing by because we didn't get enough votes. We should be campaigning on the streets. We should be willing to go to tax, willing to go to war, and that starts by building it now. Starts by building it while people are in confidence, right? Sorry. It absolutely has to be a party. Absolutely has to be a party of struggle and a party of action, and that comes through regional struggles, through regional campaigns to take over the necessary living functions of society. Sorry. Yeah.
Gentleman behind him. Yeah. Yeah, I've seen you.
Thank you, all the speakers. It's Jeremy from Workers' Power. I'd have to take issue, first of all, with the idea that abolish immigration controls is in fact a liberal policy. Not a single liberal party, not a single bourgeois party in the world has that policy. We should be, why? Because we should be for all people who want to come and live and work in Britain to be allowed to do so with full citizenship rights. We should be for cutting the hours, not the jobs, so that there are jobs for all. And we should be for a programme of public works under workers' control to expand the housing, the hospitals, etc., the schools, to meet the needs of an increased population. You have got a racist policy, I'm afraid. Secondly, on the minimum maximum programme, I think this is trying to smuggle socialism in through the back door. Richard is absolutely right. No parliament, which translates into English as talking shop, by the way, no parliament will be able to legislate for socialism. You'll actually have to take a revolution. And so you cannot reduce the fight for socialism as simply the fight for democracy. I think that we need, as some of the last three speakers have said, is some kind, and the sister over here, a transitional programme of needs. Yeah, a programme to meet people's needs. And what we mean by a transitional programme is a programme that actually works in motion. So as you win, as you build for fights, you also build to counter the sabotage that's going to come against your fights. So workers controlled in one factory leads to workers control in a whole branch of industry, which leads to the fight for workers control in the whole economy. And the crowning point has to be the fight for a workers' government led by workers' councils and a workers' militia. I'll leave it there.
Barbara.
Hi everyone, I'm Barbara from the International Bolshevik Tendency. I've just come from a conference, and if there's one thing that conference is not talking about is what kind of program for your party. So thank you to the SUP for putting on this meeting and hosting this event. We think it's really important for the left to talk to each other about this. We haven't signed up to the SUP because we think it's rather premature to be talking about socialist unity among the people here. We still have a lot to talk about, a lot to say. So, there's been a lot of things that have been said tonight that I agree with, but there are some different perspectives here. And one of the key differences is this idea that we have to separate our minimum program and our maximum program. bit further. Is that better? Yeah. And while others here say that we need a program, we need a complete program that we fight for. And part of that program, so we're talking about your party, we're not just talking about program in abstract. So what we need to do is take on the party where it is. We need to contrast what we're saying to what we saw in the conference hall today. A debate on a political statement that was bad enough as it was, and there we were debating whether socialism and working class should be removed from that statement. Even without that, we think that statement's deeply insufficient because it has all these nice ideas, but it has no idea of how to get there and no acknowledgement of how the state and the establishment are going to stop us getting there. So we've created an alternative political statement for your party which addresses some of these issues and situates itself within the debates within the party.
Sorry, can you sum up? I have a long list and less than 10 minutes.
We've also got there a few really key issues that lead to this that we need to fight about in the party. One of them is the Greens, the question of popular frontism. There are a distressing number of people in the party that want to support the Greens. There's questions like imperialism, what position do we take on Ukraine? There will be divisions in this room about that. We have to debate this. We need to inject revolutionary politics because we need to build a party that will inject itself into the struggle. Struggle alone is not enough.
The lady with orange shirt here, orange t-shirt.
My name is Roxanne. I'm part of the leadership program branch as well. What Jeremy said, what Richard said, what Michael said, what the Democratic Socialist comrade said, about the transitional program. Trotsky has some stuff to say on that as well. One of the ways that we're going to really hear even people, in my opinion, who identify as Trotskyists not actually sticking to this in the real world is on the question of local elections. I don't know if you've heard about people's budgets. The social... Sorry. You see if you know, and then you get up here, thank you. The Socialist Party and Tusk, as probably most of you know, is a good example. We'll talk about people's budget and about setting a legal budget still, whereby they borrow and use reserve funds, and then all it is, and it's legal, so it's all good, so we can get in there. And then what you do is you keep going until you can pressure central government to give you more money. It will be an emergency situation, but then people are equating that with direct action. Now, I'm not saying that we shouldn't use local elections as a platform, just as we might use Parliament, but let's not conflate workers' power and workers' councils with Parliament as well. I think that tends to happen. When we are fighting for these programmes on a local basis, we need to be bringing in, for example, among other things, the question of the state, because that's what's always missing. So if we are countering these things, and we're actually really challenging state power, we need to talk about self-defence. And that's when people tell us that we're pushing things too far, that we're being too radical. But if we don't talk about that in conjunction with expropriation, in conjunction with challenging that power. And I mean, you know, Zara Sultana, question time, she was saying some really amazing things that I agreed with, and then the question came to that, how are you going to pay for it? And then it was, well, we're going to do a wealth tax on the people with £10 million of assets or more, and then we'll just take that from that money tree and pass it around. But as HaPe said in his presentation, we're going to be dealing with the British state and with the capitalists themselves when we do that, so we've got to tell the truth now.
Thank you. Gentlemen with two-coloured people. At the back, multicolored. Yeah, him. Yeah. I have two more.
A lot of talk about, how to put it, things that are quite far ahead, about developing for the future. But what I want to talk about is things that I'm seeing now. One of the things that really, really jumps out at me right now is the Democratic Socialists. One of the reasons I was drawn to the group was because of the way that they could see the people in the group when I first started engaging were rapidly trusting one another. And that ties into my point really quite a lot. There's been a lot of calls for unity today in the party. And I think those calls are very mistaken, because when you call for unity but you don't have trust, what you're actually doing is exercising authority.
Yes, exactly.
And when systems are built based on authority and not on trust, those systems are systems that we cannot trust. And so what I want to urge us to do is look not so much towards the far future, although we need to think about that, but to think about the building blocks down at the grassroots, about how we build trust in communities, how we draw people together where they've been thrown apart.
Alan, at the back. Alan, and then it's you. Sorry, Alan, not you. Sorry, he raised his... No, we haven't got time, sorry.
Gabriel, Spartacist. I'll let my comrade answer what's been said on the discussion. I just actually want to ask a question to people. Why did it go so bad for us today? You know, a lot of our ideas are popular in that room, yet we got smashed. I think we have to have a real discussion and self-reflect a little bit. And honestly, I think this discussion also reflects why we're not having an impact, because it's in another world. It has nothing to do with actual debates going on. So why did it go so bad for us today, and how are we going to do better? That's the question we have to ask ourselves.
Alan, yeah, give it back to Alan.
Good question, Gabriel.
He doesn't want to speak.
He had raised his hands before all of these people, so I can't stop him.
Yeah, just very quickly, it's quite interesting hearing what I think is a split of opinion within an overall agreement. And I tend to favour the speakers who talked about trying to encourage working class power and consciousness of the working class over our own power. And whether that's Richard's very ambitious program of action, or whether that's HaPe's more reasonable one. I'm a bit worried on the Democratic Socialists who projected reformism as part of the struggle, and that revolutionary politics just means more reformism. I think you need to be careful about that. Certainly the struggle for reforms can be part of the revolutionary struggle, but reformism is the enemy of the revolutionary struggle.
Thank you. Jack, it's your turn, and that's it.
Yeah, Jack Conrad. I've also just... I'm speaking into the microphone, so that's not too loud, I hope.
No.
Oh, it's fine.
Closer.
Okay, I've just come back from the conference, and I'm just picking up on what...
Closer.
Oh,
I'll hear you.
The right amount. It's about that.
I know, okay. I was just picking up on what Gabriel was saying, and we got smashed today. There's no question of that. This is a stitch-up. I think John Reese...
Speak up.
John Reese said it's a stitch-up. It's a stitch-up. I haven't heard the whole of this debate, so I have to apologise. But I think Mike said that your party is going to become a Labour Party. I want to disagree, Mike. I think what it is, if it's nearer anything, is Podemos, it's Mélenchon's party. I don't know enough about De Linke, but this is going to be in the name of democracy, in the name of consulting people, in the name of not putting anyone off. This is going to be a top-down bureaucratic party. And therefore, we're right to talk about what changes we want, but we need to be realistic that we are not moulding it. We might be fighting in it for propaganda or agitation. We have lost it. And therefore, you know, what we actually need to be doing is picking up on all these debates that we're having, and we might not arrive at unity, but we might arrive at an understanding. In other words, what we could do is actually take the unity of, I don't like the word myself, but the far left. We could take that one step forward because of your party, and because we're all here together, because we're all talking. Last point. I'll tell you a party with a minimum maximum programme that succeeded the RSDLP Bolsheviks. They had a minimum maximum programme, and they led the working class to power. And that is the example we ought to learn from, comrades.
Okay, comrades, I have to give you only 2 minutes each. The reason is this room has to be vacated, changes in the seating arrangements, and... Can you pass it on?
Go in reverse way, sure.
Yeah.
Reverse way. No, it doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. I'll change it in the middle.
Right.
Go ahead.
I do feel I live in a different world of many of the intervention. I'm not so, we can talk about workers' power, workers' militia, etc., etc. What happens today is that the right wing is on the offensive against us, and the argument I made is that the fundamental problem of the left is a lack of political coherence. What the left has been doing in the last 30 years has not been working. Our movement is in crisis. So comrades can just repeat the same mantra and same abstract slogan, it won't work. On the question of immigration, anything I said was racist and absolutely absurd. What I've questioned is the fact that most working class people do not distinguish at all between socialists and liberals. For most of them, socialists and liberals are the same defenders of the status quo. What is your answer to effectuate this separation between socialists and liberals in the eyes of most working class people? What is the difference between what you put forward on this question and Corbyn's program? Now, yet the right smashed us today. I think tomorrow we must fight back, and I think what needs to happen in the argument that I kept repeating is the appeal of democracy is good. It's not that I don't want to deprioritize it. I want a democratic party. But what we have to do is to tap into the aspirations of most of the base of your party. They want a party that opposes Zionism. They want a party that opposes the British ruling class. And they are getting served a middle class, tepid stuff led by Corbyn to talk about peace and justice and whatnot. So we need to make our fight political about what are we going to have as a party. Because all these measures against the left are directed to expel all revolutionary socialists. So we question what we've been doing, fight on clear political lines, and fight liberals. Thank you.
I'll just come back quickly to the comrade at the back. I did mean reforms as part of the struggle, but if I'm being sort of picky, reformism is part of the struggle in that it exposes itself and its own limitations along the way, and we have to make sure that those limitations are fully exposed by exposing them.
Go ahead.
We're going to stand up if that's all right. Quite right. Now, what we've seen is a class struggle in the process of the formation of this new party. That is very clear. Every step of the way, from not sharing the data with the branches, to handing the selection of council candidates to the MPs, to trying to protect the MPs' positions on the leadership body, to insisting that our relationship with the trade unions will be conducted through a committee of senior union officials, to expelling the Socialist Workers' Party, to insulting Zara Sultana deliberately, right? This is an attempt to consolidate a bureaucracy before they allow branches and a membership to get out there and build and grow officially in the name of this new party. The name of which, by the way, appears to be designed to be as anonymous as possible, right? So as to make it as hard as possible for us to grow at the base until they've consolidated their apparatus. Now, this is why a reformist party is not just a socialist party that has the same objective but different methods to us. This is because a reformist party proposes to intermediate between capital and labour and needs an apparatus that can do so, which can police the working class and which is immune from the control of the working class and which is equipped through every cynical mechanism that you saw today and that we've seen over the weeks running up to this conference, right, to divide and frustrate and confuse and atomise workers when we try to come together. From 800,000 to 50,000, and now what? So what do we do the day after this conference? What we do is we go to our branches, proto-branches, we're the only democratic, the only real, the only fighting organisations in the whole process. How dare they call us illegitimate? How dare they refuse us data? I'm elected to chair my branch. Nobody elected them. How dare they say that we are in some way being undemocratic in this process? But what is more, we must start the fight. We must get the branches fighting against the landlords, fighting against the people who are putting prices up, fighting for free transport, fighting for an actual integrated pay claim in 2026 across the public and private sectors so that we can try to get the unions to fight together, not through a deal between the union tops, but by using our members to organise in every union to put an actual serious fight, a real serious fight around the cost of living. And the last point I want to make is that that is how we will take this out of their hands, because if we then bring those branches together, federate them, an all London Assembly, an all Birmingham Assembly, an all Manchester Assembly, which is democratic, which is a delegate body, then we will be the party. We will be it, and they will never stop it.
Pretty much agree with everything that Richard just said. I mean, the other point is that obviously we're now in an economic situation that the British government is not only in deep economic crisis, it's probably the only government that puts their money into US state bonds. And whilst the dollar is melting away in value, so they're digging their own grave in a way, but unless we can actually turn this thing around, Tommy Robinson is knocking on the door, and we'll be in the concentration camps. So, yeah, again, Richard pointed towards the right direction. We need to turn it around, fight within the party as long as we can, whilst it's still liberal. And yeah, I'll leave it there.
I agree on the question of fighting within the party as long as we can, trying to make something out of branches, etc. I agree. The reality, however, the situation that we face.
Speak into the microphone.
I am speaking. Okay. Close. The reality that we face is that a lot of the sale of this stuff, this is precisely, Jack is right, it's not a new Labour Party, it's a new Podemos with Corbyn as Pablo Iglesias, it's a new Five Star with Corbyn as Pepe Grillo, it's a new La France Insoumise with Corbyn as Mélenchon, totally centralised, using copyright law and control of funds and stewarding to prevent any sort of political opposition. In order to fight against that, yes, we can try and turn the branches into an opposition to it, but the reality is, for that to work, the whole of the far left needs to organise together. Because as soon as we're trying to do that, if it's the people in this room and not the Socialist Workers' Party and not the other parties, actually the result is just a repetition of the endless attempts of one sort and another that we've had. In order to do that, we need to be able to work together. In that context, I add, it's not a question of building trust in order to build unity, because we have to work together with people who we are compelled to work together with people who we don't trust. That's true in every union. Every union branch. I was back in the 70s, I was at one occasion, either queer bashed or Pavlov bashed, I was never sure which. But I was saved by a bloke from the right wing of the union branch, who I hadn't been
friends with in any sense, but he had a sense of solidarity which was part of his union membership. You know? It's that sense of that we are obliged to act together, which is what's posed. Okay, second point, finally, just very briefly, everybody else except me is for transitional program, transitional method. We're going to have mass struggles. The mass struggles grow. We had workers' control of the line in Cowley. That was going to spread to workers' control of the line in the coal. This is 1970s. That was going to spread to workers' control of the line in coal mines. And that, in turn, that's the method. The reality was that the Labour Party on the one hand, and the Communist Party of Great Britain, as was the old official party, on the British road to socialism, their political authority overthrew the Trotskyist leadership in Cowley with the assistance of the British state. In order to get from the individual struggle to power, you have to be posing the question of working class solutions at the level of legislation. Not necessarily you're going to win it. Not necessarily, certainly not, you're going to get a government. That's the wrong way. But you have to be posing at the level of legislation. Secondly, you have to be posing something realistic, and that means we can break with US imperialism through the common action of the European working class, but bringing socialism in one country in Britain means like socialism in the Isle of Wight or Devon. That's where we are.